This video is sponsored by Exter. A Windows laptop with enough power to be a desktop. A MacBook as portable as a tablet with the notch of a smartphone. And a Chromebook that wants to become, well, whatever you want it to be. A portable game deck that gives you the power of a console on the road. And a pocketable one that turns back the clock on what mobile gaming even means. A smartwatch stymied by Google, another one that barely admits Google has anything to do with it, and a trio of wireless earphones that make travel a whole lot more relaxing.
I'm Michael Fisher, and these are 10 products I planned to review, but didn't quite get to in 2022.
This video was written on 2 Korean Air flights, one 13 hours and one 16 hours, as I vaulted over the North Pole to and from South Korea to see, among other things, a new feature of Samsung's earbuds that I'll show you later in this video. Now, you should know that Samsung provided lodging, entertainment, and business class travel for my work week in Korea, but regardless of that, the company received no editorial input or copy approval rights. It never even gets an early preview of my coverage. Let's start in the air. It doesn't matter how comfortable the aircraft, even if it has an onboard bar and lounge. For 16 hours on a plane, you need a few distractions. And this Nintendo Switch on steroids is number 10 on my list, the Steam Deck. I bought one because I'm always on the go, and I'm just so tired of having to settle for the compromised experience of a mobile game when I am so going. See, Valve knows that sometimes all that scratches the itch is a full-on console-quality game like Red Dead Redemption 2, so it found a way to condense a console into a handheld. Now, there are still a lot of compromises to the Steam Deck. It's huge and heavy. There's no backlighting behind its buttons, so it's hard to play in the dark, and if you play with the kind of settings I like, well, you'll probably only get about an hour on a charge. Bugs are still frustratingly pervasive, with demanding titles occasionally slowing to a crawl, and its versatility has limits. I was excited about being able to play some legacy PC games from my Steam library, but many of them just won't run. But deep as that list of downsides is, it dwindles in comparison to the diversity of games I can play when I can't get to my home console. When I caught COVID and had to quarantine for a week in my old apartment's basement office, I could still play GTA 5. When I visit my family out in the country, their slow Wi-Fi doesn't matter because all the games are locally stored. So even though the Steam Deck is a big, expensive compromise and the very pinnacle of a first-generation product, I still can't help but love it. Now, if the Steam Deck is the Queen Mary 2 of portable game consoles, the PlayDate is a lot more like the kayaks I sometimes paddle around in. This modern rethinking of a classic Game Boy feels every bit like the crowdfunding success story it is. Incredibly intentional and minimal to a fault. There's no color to the memory LCD screen, no backlight behind that screen or the buttons, and no official way to get more games in a hurry. A new indie title is pushed to the PlayDate via Wi-Fi every week. What is here is a package that seems tailor-made for those who appreciate whimsy, with fun yellow and purple color options for the deck and the case, and a cutesy interface that reminds me of the last days of the Pebble smartwatch. Much of it manipulated with this crank on the side. That's a novel interface that makes the PlayDate stand out from the pack, and ditto the simple titles written for it. That said, this one was consigned to the leftovers bin because the games tend to be so simple that, well, more often than not, I'd rather just settle for a mobile game on my phone, or bring my Switch or Steam Deck along if I am going to bring something additional. I've also had trouble with my unit keeping a charge, though that may have been due to me running older software for a while. But if you're on an intentionality kick, with a dumb phone in one hand and a notebook in the other, or you're shopping for someone too young for a smartphone over the holidays, the PlayDate is one of a kind.
Numbers 8 and 7 are a 1-2 punch from a category I'm very excited to see heating up again: smartwatches. But while each runs Google's new Wear OS 3 platform, they're actually two very different sides of the same Android wearable coin.
Of the two, Samsung's Galaxy Watch 5 is much more polished, having benefited from a few more months on the market and Samsung's close partnership with Google. It launched alongside Samsung's new foldables this past summer, and its sporty white 20mm band, the sheer-sided 44mm aluminum case, and bright watch face led to a lot of compliments as I wore it around town. That watch face is protected by sapphire crystal on the model I'm wearing, which explains why it looks so good even though I beat the devil out of it. And although I can use any watch face I want, I've never changed it away from this stock one, with its classy monogram and custom complications that all fit so seamlessly with the overall design. Toss in the clever capacitive bezel for navigation, the fact that you can use Samsung Smart Switch to easily move your info from an older Galaxy Watch, and the solid 2-day battery life, even with always-on display enabled, and you've got yourself a really balanced, really solid smartwatch. Still, the Galaxy Band is discoloring much faster than I expected. It's also a little goofy looking in how far away from the wrist it stands. If that bugs you too, or you find Samsung's heavy-handed interface a little too cartoonish, or you prefer a physical crown to a virtual bezel, then you, like me, were probably buoyed to see the Fossil Group announce a new watch for the end of 2022, the Gen 6 Wellness Edition. Its 44mm unisex case packs the stainless steel, the pronounced pushers, and the digital crown the Samsung Watch lacks, and it runs a version of Wear OS 3 that's much closer to stock, with just a few enhancements like the usual battery-saving modes, Fossil's fitness suite, and broader compatibility if you're one of the folks that wants to use a Fossil watch with an iPhone instead of an Android. So what's the problem? Well, Fossil specifically would not say this because they're a class act, but my perception is that Google has not been a great partner to almost any watchmaker but Samsung. The Google Assistant that runs just fine on the Galaxy Watch and Pixel Watch, it's still not available on any other wearable, ostensibly due to technical issues stemming from the fact that Google chose to optimize Assistant for Samsung chipsets before Qualcomm ones. In its place, Amazon Alexa, which would be fine if, when I asked for the weather forecast, it didn't try to sell me Kindle books or give me tips on sanitizing.
Want to hear one now?
No.
Or tell me that
Where's
the closest coffee shop is IKEA when there's a place with coffee shop literally in its name a lot closer.
Lies.
On top of that, Fossil still feels like the budget buy with its bottom-of-the-barrel packaging, cheap-feeling USB-A charger, Gorilla Glass instead of sapphire, rubbery 20mm strap that holds onto dust like it's its job, and software with just a little bit more jitter than you'll get on a Pixel Watch or Galaxy Watch. It's all just a little too much compromise to give it the full-throated recommendation that I've given to Fossil in the past. As I've mentioned before, I edit all MrMobile videos on my M1 Max MacBook Pro. Rationally speaking, there's no better machine for someone who needs to take his production studio with him wherever he goes.
But it's a heavy machine, and friends, I'm getting old. The more I shove in my backpack, the more I feel the pressure on my gradually compressing spine, and I began to yearn for the good old days of Pocket Now when we uploaded in HD, and all I needed was my trusty MacBook Air.
Enter Apple's new MacBook Air M2, aka my script writing notebook, pretty much ever since it dropped back in July. And that's because it combines the two most important aspects I value about a laptop: portability and endurance. The midnight blue chassis may be an epic expanse of never-ending fingerprints, but it's so thin and light that I barely feel it in a backpack, more often going with a simple satchel if I'm only writing. And despite that lightweight, yes, air-like construction, this is the longest-lasting computer I can remember using. At that local coffee shop during a day of writing, researching, and doom posting on Twitter, I spent 6 hours clacking the keys and only lost 25% of my battery. Normally, the number one item on my to-do list before a flight is to make sure my laptop battery is charged. But on my flight back from Korea, I got on the plane with around 60%, and was only down to about 40% by the time we were preparing to land. No, I wasn't working the whole time, more like 4 hours worth, but the point is, I could have been. That kind of stamina makes the MacBook Air the perfect machine to make any place a workplace. Now, I don't edit YouTube videos on it because this is the base model, which I bought from SnazzyCube. Thanks again, Quinn. But I have cut a few Instagram reels and stories in Final Cut, and the Air handles that just fine. If it weren't for the oddly pronounced bezel, topped off by that truly hideous notch, and the somewhat dull industrial design that Apple seems to have settled into, this is a machine I truly love. As it is, I can only say it's one of the best work tools I've ever bought. And that's probably more important. In a reversal of my usual style, I have much less to say about a more unusual product, but that's just because I haven't used it as much. This isn't your usual Chromebook, folks. It's a framework Chromebook, which means it was built to be easily repaired and even more easily upgraded on the go. In place of the usual fixed ports on the sides are 4 little expansion bays, each containing a replaceable module. So if you're heading into a situation where you need a lot of diverse ports, like USB-A, HDMI, microSD, you can literally build your laptop for that task. And then revert it all to USB-C or whatever your normal configuration is when you return. You remember that Panasonic PC I reviewed a few years ago with all those expansion modules? Yeah, this is basically a much smaller, sleeker version of that. And on top of the customizability, you've got a comfy keyboard, physical switches to cut off the webcam and mic, even a display that seems reflective in a somewhat useful way when you're fighting direct sunlight. So why isn't this my new go-to writing machine? Well, it's a little clunkier than I'd like, and not just physically. As much polish as Chrome OS has gotten recently, I was surprised to see how many weird bugs and quirks it still has. Duplicate notifications, inconsistent keyboard behavior when running Android apps, unreliable wireless connection to my phone. Honestly, too much to go into here. And the battery life was just not good, averaging between 4 and 5 hours between charges for me when I used it at Qualcomm's Snapdragon Summit, which made me wonder why the battery wasn't one of the components Framework decided to make more easily replaceable. I mean, without taking off the whole back cover. Hopefully some of that is a result of early software or pre-production hardware, but even if so, I'm just not sure I'd rather carry around a bunch of expansion modules than the much maligned but comparatively convenient dongle. This is shaping up to be one of my longest videos ever, so I hope you're enjoying wrapping up the year with a little added runtime. Up next, we're talking cans of bud. No, that's not can, right? Oh, no, sorry, that's cans and buds. Wireless audio and one more laptop after the break. Get it? Stupid. My wallet has been with me for years, and to be honest, there's nothing wrong with it. But just like it is with tech, sometimes you take a look around at what's new and, well, you just need to change it up a little bit. This video is sponsored by Exter, whose mission is to make your wallet easier to use and harder to lose. If you're a traditionalist, you might like the modular bifold with its removable magnetic holder to keep more cards. Or for you cashless cruisers out there, the card holder comes in lightweight aluminum, carbon fiber, or leather, all of which have this very slick switch with which to deploy those cards. And if you're like me, you might split the difference with the Parliament. Cash on the strap, pop-out cards in a skimmer-resistant casing, and an available solar-powered tracker card, or Apple AirTag holster, to make it less losable. All of these can be modified with accessories to tailor them to your specific needs. And it doesn't stop at wallets. Exter has laptop sleeves, phone cases, even duffel bags to make your everyday life easier. Visit them at the link in the description, and thanks to Exter for sponsoring this video. Back in 2016, the Bose Quiet Comfort 35s were the first headphones that exposed me to noise-canceling technology. And I was so floored by that black magic that I started reviewing headphones on the channel, something that wasn't originally one of my areas of focus. But as many cans as I covered in the wake of those, I always had a big soft spot for the 35s. So when Bose released their spiritual successor earlier this year, I asked my friends at Qualcomm, the chipmaker whose silicon enables much of that sound-squashing sorcery, to ship me a sample. And that's how I came to use the QC45s over the past few months, and they're just the right amount of boring iteration the line needed. No flashy touch controls or futuristic design, just the same old conservative cans, with big chunky buttons, USB-C charging, and ambient aware mode for when you need to hear the overhead announcements.
There may be some turbulence during the flight.
While I'd love for the buttons to have clickier feedback or to have less stolid color options, well, I'll settle for some really quiet headphones that keep the plane noise out and leave me with 60% battery after 9 continuous hours of use. For when you don't want a big set of over-ears, man, it's never been a better time for name-brand earbuds. Google's Pixel Buds Pro took everything I loved about the first generation, stripped out the annoying connectivity bugs, and packaged them into the same egg-like case. It's fine naked, or you can encapsulate it within a case like Nomad's leather job here. Nice. You get touch controls on the buds themselves, and there's noise canceling that, well, it's frankly just okay. But everything else about the Pixel Buds Pro is brilliant. I've used them with the MacBook Air, with the Flip 4, with the Pixel 7. They've been rock solid. Only thing I can't speak to is exact battery life, because I've never run out, which I think we can go ahead and chalk up as another plus. Samsung's Galaxy Buds 2 Pro are much the same, as you might expect. We've kind of plateaued to a point of parity in peripherals pimped as pros. But one thing stands out about the Galaxy Buds. During my visit to Seoul, Samsung gave Tim Schofield, David Kogan, and me early access to its 360 audio recording feature, which will debut on the Galaxy Fold 4 and Flip 4 before coming to other Samsungs next year. When you enable it, the Buds 2 Pro serve as your video microphones, producing a binaural recording. Producing a binaural? Binaural?
Binaural.
Producing a 360 recording that gives the sound a degree of directionality that really helps sell the "you are there" experience. And if you're listening to this video on headphones, you should be able to hear what I'm talking about. Yeah, not a world's first feature, but I appreciate that it's being offered on phones I actually use every day. And it's nice to see foldables get a little temporary exclusive feature, too.
"5 days and 12,000 miles later, I'm home. I read all the books. I watched all the movies on the plane. What I really want to do now is game."
Yep, even though my Twitch channel is in a state of stasis at the moment, from time to time I still love to do a non-streamed sesh of Star Wars Squadrons or Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I still like the option of taking that gaming to go. Thankfully, ASUS keeps building its Republic of Gaming laptops, and its newest Zephyrus is, predictably, the biggest powerhouse yet to grace that republic. The second screen below the main monitor has gotten an even bigger prop-up, which makes it even easier to see, and there are ports galore if you want to add a third display, as well as a deliciously saturated and gamery, color-synced animated wallpaper to marry all those canvases. The trackpad is as small as ever, but its hidden numpad is as delightful as ever. There's a new battery health mode that limits charging to 60% when plugged in, which makes me feel a lot better about the long-term health of that battery. And more important than most of this, incredible power under the hood. On the boldest stress test I could imagine, I set Microsoft Flight Simulator to Ultra, flew at maximum graphics settings while also streaming the session on Twitch via OBS. And the AMD Ryzen 9 with RTX 3080 Ti combo kept up. Oddly, I did see some frame drops and general slowdowns on Microsoft Flight Simulator when I was not streaming at a later session, as you can see here, but that was an anomaly. I really don't know what caused that. Bottom line, it's an incredible machine to come home to, and if I were doing the great YouTube to Twitch pivot, well, there's no gaming laptop that I would even consider besides this one.
Thanks for joining me for another pseudo-annual installment of The Leftovers, folks. And if there's a product you think I still missed out on, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to know about it. Maybe I'll cover it in the new year. And speaking of the new year, for the first time since 2020, I will be on the ground in Las Vegas for CES. Stay tuned for all that weird, wild wonderfulness. And don't worry, there's still one more video to go before 2022 comes to a close.
With the exception of the Steam Deck, PlayDate, and MacBook Air, which were purchased by my publisher, all devices in this video are review samples provided by their respective manufacturers or partners. But, as I said at the top, none of the companies I cover are ever given editorial control over my content. If you want to see more videos like that, please subscribe to the MrMobile on YouTube. Until next time, from Michael Fisher, thanks for watching. And stay mobile, my friends.